Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude. Welcome everyone to our Quantum Light Property Clearing Chronicles here on Diane Of The Sun YouTube channel. Welcome to Tarvars, Lauren, and Tiffany. Tonight we will be bringing forth some signs that your property needs to be cleared. I am Diane Of The Sun, owner of Inlakesh Studio One, a franchise of The Sun. You can check out our highly vibrational services and products at inlakeshstudio1.com and check us out on Instagram as well. And there are many things to check out in the description below this live stream. So we will get started tonight. I invite you to join me. Shall we call for the highest possible vibration? Shall we call for the highest possible vibration? Shall we call for the highest possible vibration? And shall we call for the truth? Shall we call to see the truth, hear the truth, and speak the truth? Shall we accept nothing less than the truth in all of our experiences? All righty, we have an exciting session tonight. So Tarvars, did you want to start tonight?
Yes. Thank you for starting the engine. I'll hit that gas pedal. Let's accelerate forward into this wonderful evening with you all. So Inlakesh Veritas, everyone who's joining us. And today we're again speaking about signs that you might need a clearing for your property. And I was thinking to myself, how would I begin this? And I heard a voice, my guidance, say, the way you always do. And usually with clients, I give an analogy to help really ground what is seemingly abstract, but is so influential in our everyday lives. And so when we think about property clearing, this is a form of extended energy hygiene, where this is for an individual who realizes that their energy bodies require clearing and that their environment carries an energy or energies that they are interconnected with, that are influencing them in a myriad of different ways, and they want to make sure that that extension of themselves are clean and clear too. So if we think about things like, for example, our teeth, right? When do we feel like our teeth need to be brushed? Sometimes you feel a little buildup, maybe you got something in your tooth and you feel the need, oh, I need to floss before it becomes problematic. What happens if we start ignoring these subtle signs that are not so subtle? They're there, but sometimes we're like, it'll be okay. And then next thing you know, infection, bacteria starts happening, your breath starts smelling foul. People are like, do you want a mint? There's these interactions that are indicators that something is off. So we experience that same thing with our spaces and places, where in some cases, a property can look clean physically, but still feel unsettled, where we notice energetic changes in the atmosphere and, not quite necessarily knowing how to describe it. But our goal here is to not necessarily create fear around the homes. Our goal is to just become observant and recognize when the environment does not feel supportive, when there is a gravitational pull, when it goes against your stability, your coherence, your peace. And that shows up in a myriad of different ways, whether it's our relationships with other occupants in the space, whether it's our work life, our finances, our health. All of these different things can be impacted by the space that we're in. So I'm going to kick things off with number one reason, because there's a lot of them. And look, for those who are tuning in, we really have to condense this down because we have so many examples of signs. We're going to start with something very basic, and then we're going to launch off. First, we were driving. Now we're about to get into a spaceship or expand our wings and flap off into the sunset. So one of the first things that I thought, okay, this is a really good point, is when you have recently moved into a previously occupied property. This is something that all of us have experienced. Heck, you could even say this about a used vehicle. Where you notice, okay, this doesn't quite feel like me. Something's different. And the thing is, we don't know everything that occurred before the property, before we arrived to the property. not all the information is on Zillow or Redfin, right? So with property clearing, we can look into those, but some different points are the homes and the spaces, they literally carry the history, the charge of the energetic imprints, the experiences of the past occupants. And we are literally stepping into that. Some of this is also based off of frequency resonance because, we're a match. We're pulling ourselves into it. Even though we were not the ones who imprinted these frequencies, there's something in us that resonates with this, right? And so essentially, this is giving precedence to the idea that we have a relationship with the property. And so another aspect about the properties is that, you know, we want to make sure that the property, like, again, supports our evolution and our growth. So as a little side note, within the Of the Sun energy clearing protocol, individuals are getting their souls cleared. But embedded within that process, we're also clearing the property. Because what happens is that oftentimes when people are looking to grow and evolve, the space that contains the memory of all the stuff that they're looking to move beyond, all the experiences of the old self, it's still echoing and broadcasting, which would often pull us into different states, in particular, the old states of being that are not in the direction or trajectory of growth that we're looking to go. So, this extension of clearing your soul, clear your space so that your space supports the direction of growth and evolution. So with that being said, now that we have a little bit of foundation, I want to lay one case study. So I had a client in Miami. Her and her husband got a divorce. They owned several properties. There were several properties in South America, specifically Venezuela. And then they had, I think it was two properties in Miami. In one of the condos they both lived in, and they were divorced. So when we're clearing properties, one of the energetic interferences that we clear is called divorce energy. I think with the term, you can kind of get context clues of what we're looking at here. But it's not just the moment of divorce, it's everything that led up to the divorce. I love you and I hate you. I can't stand you. And then next thing you know, we're sleeping together, but then we're fighting again the next day. This argumentative tit for tat, and it blows up all the things that lead up to the actual divorce. And so, again, they were divorced there. She moves out. They're working on allocating the properties after the divorce, who gets what. And so she gets that property in Miami and she decides to rent it out. And her sister happens to be a property clearer, but she was just starting out. So she directed her to us professionally. So she says, "Okay, I want to clear this property, but I feel like things are off and, plus the divorce and then when we had the consultation, I shared with her about the divorce energy that we saw in there, and there are many different frequencies that we could see that were imprinted within the environment that was a byproduct of the relationship and the experience that they shared. Fast forward somewhere in the consult, even though I had already told her we cleared the divorce energy, she goes, you know, I've seen that the residents who I'm renting out the home to, they're always arguing. It kind of reminds me of me and my ex-husband. And I said, that's because they're influenced. And so she's like, oh my gosh, that's so the truth. So it was out of sight, out of mind. But again, when you walk someone through and you understand these laws and principles, that what is in the field will faithfully be broadcasting, and it will be perpetuated unless we come with a greater, stronger energy of influence to imprint the space, which most people, this is out of sight and out of mind, but they will repeat the cycle and the energies and the behaviors and experiences of whatever was imprinted in the past, which was the bickering and the argumentative energy. And uh, at some point, she said they weren't like this. She knows the couple. They're not just like strangers who she's renting out. She actually knows these people, and she said they weren't always like this. And so her energies influenced them, and they went on the same exact trajectory as her and her ex-husband. So of course we cleared the frequencies, and they were on their way moving out, but her goal was, I want to clear this property because they're moving out, and you know I want to reset the space for the new occupants. So the beautiful thing is that whoever would have been moving into that space would no longer be subjected to the divorce energy, which again, clearly within that experience, unless we come with a stronger impression in the environment, we will likely perpetuate it. So this is a really good reason, and it's not just with divorces, it's any type of strong disagreement where there's emotional tense energy, where anytime you go into that space, the memories reoccur, or you notice, for example, this experience that I'm having now was not happening until I moved into this space. Now things are kind of going left. Maybe it's not just you. Maybe it's the environment influencing you to perpetuate. I rest my case. I feel like, ladies, anyone has any thoughts, as well as jumping in with one of the next signs?
Yes, I'll jump in. Lots of thoughts. So much of this makes so much sense, and Tarvars, this example is so telling to the truth of so many of the experiences I think many of us have on a day-to-day basis, but we're just not looking at it from that perspective. And to have that insight and that clarity to know, oh, hey, you're connecting the dots to say something is influencing this experience, and there's something that we can do about that to clean it up, to clean the space, to clean the energy. And what I wanted to kind of talk about, and this is a principle that we learn as quantum light property clearers, is that the space is the person and the person is the space. So it's so important that as we're working on ourselves, that we exist and operate within a space that is clean and clear, elevated, as we are trying to elevate ourselves into those experiences. And so that is so telling. And I could also see how the clearing was supporting the understanding within the client to see the connection. How, oh, wait, all these people are fighting now. The energy of the space was attracting that frequency match for that experience. So we can do something about that. And that's the brilliant understanding with quantum light property clearing, is that we're restoring the truth, light, and life to bring elevation into the experience. And I see this time and time again in many experiences with clients and in clearings, in my own experience as well as a clearer. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was this idea of our pets also are such a brilliant compass to help us understand that something might be off within the space. I had a clearing once upon a time where a couple had moved in, just like you had mentioned, to a new home, and they had a few children and a dog. And the dog, very connected, very active, very much a part of the family member. The dog would not go in the basement, and it would stand at the door and bark. It would just bark and bark and bark. And then it would sit there at the door and lay in front of it and get very docile. So they were noticing, what is going on with our dog? Something is completely off. This is not normal. This is not anything that we've experienced before. To the point then that the children were saying, there's something in the basement. So the children were so connected to the understanding of what the dog was feeling, that then the parents were understanding, we need to do something about this. And so we spoke about that, went into the clearing. I shared with them that there were aspects or entities within the space that needed to be cleared out, picking up on discordant energies that needed assistance getting to the next place. Cleared the space. Everything seemed to come back into normality, right? So the dog was then able to go downstairs. Everybody went back into their normal functions. They actually found out from the realtor later that the person who lived in the house beforehand had died in the house. So this understanding and recognizing that that individual, they were still in the space and they were confused and concerned, who's in my space? And it was creating this tension and this dissonance that the animal, who is so pure and so connected to truth, our animals are brilliant. And our pets show us really, and try to help us understand and see what's off. And they read the energies. not only of people that we engage with, but of our spaces. And so the children then picked up on that because they're so connected at that young, innocent, pure energy, that it prompted the clearing. And so all of this came forward not only to assist those that are now occupying in the space to bring the space up to a better frequency, but to assist those that had gone before us to move into the space that they were supposed to go to. So this is such an aspect of property clearing that when we pay attention and we feel into the energies and the vibrations that are resonating, to go deeper, to not just say, oh, that's weird, and keep moving. Do something about it. And that's what clearing can do. It assists us, and then we get the whole story, and we can assist all levels and all dimensions.
If I may, just very briefly, for those who are tuning in, and then I'll pass the ball to Tiffany. I feel you, Tiffany. I feel you. Tiffany has animals and everything, just like resonant energy. Just briefly, for those who are tuning in, when we are clearing, we are doing entity removal from the space. As she mentioned, like, people get earthbound and don't cross over. And especially the attachment, the ownership, this is a regular thing. And then I love how, the dogs, the animals are canaries in the cave, so to say. And it's something that's so normal, and so many people may see their animals staring off in the distance and like, what are you barking at, Skip? Or, well, I don't know, whatever, they're chocolate, brownie, whatever they name the dogs or the animals. But just again, like you said, dismissing it. And I can go on and on, but this is something that's acknowledged. There are a myriad of different things that we clear, entities that are attached to the space, ghosts, disembodied spirits who aren't necessarily negative, but he doesn't belong there. He needs assistance with moving on. So, Tiffany, you mind jumping back into this?
Yes, please. You actually brought my mind to something else that I want to share. I'll share my anecdote from a clearing I did recently. In the car on the way over to where I am right now, my daughter's in the car with me, and she said, "Oh, what's your topic for tonight? What are you talking about?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh, well, make sure you tell them when we moved into our home how Malachi, who was our cat at the time, and I were sitting outside on the side of the house, and you were clearing. All of a sudden, we both ran around the corner and stared at you and said, 'We just heard, oh.'" And I was like, "Oh, well, I was just clearing ghosts because people had died who lived in this house before, and I was clearing ghosts from the properties. It's fascinating that you were able to hear that." She said, "Oh, yeah, and Malachi did too. We both stared and we heard and we ran to tell you." And, I don't have that auditory um, uh, gift. And so I feel things differently, and my clairvoyance comes forward differently. And so it was just fascinating. And she still to this day, remembers that experience in that moment. But I wanted to share, I recently cleared a home, and this woman called me and said, "We recently moved, and my daughter she's always kind of had slightly depression issues, and she wasn't happy about the move. But she said, when we moved into this house, I can see a difference with her. Like, she just wants to be in her room all the time by herself. She has tried to enter into some self-harm behavior. She said she's even attracting a partner who is harming himself as well. She said, so I'm seeing it in the partners she's attracting. I'm seeing it in what she's doing to herself." And she said, and a side note, the business that we had that's been super abundant is now completely dismantling and collapsing and not really working either. And so I talked to her about how everything you're all talking about, we're frequency matches for the spaces in which we live, the good and bad, the ugly. So you were attracted to this space for all the good that was in you, that was connected to it, but also the negative that was in you also felt comfortable in this space. And so it's been amplified by the space. So I clear the space, and I'm getting all this information coming forward, and I'm sharing with her and how the past energies of the owners who were in this space, particularly in her daughter's room, are contributing to what has amplified in her daughter. And then all of a sudden this light bulb goes off, and she said, "Oh my gosh, child who lived here before committed suicide. Could it be that? I'm like, yes, it could be that. And it actually is. And it was just so visceral, the reality of what actually happens when you move to a space that hasn't been cleared before. You not only, it pulls out in you what's connected to that space, but then it amplifies it in you. And so the self-harm that was coming from her daughter was being amplified by the self-harm that was already in this space. And it was increasing it in her daughter, so much so that her daughter was then attracting people who were also doing the same thing. And then her business was also taking on this lack energy. And it was so fascinating. So once all of this has been cleared, I talked to her about the importance of, bringing into the space things that can bring life to the space, to continue that shift in frequency that I had cleared away. So she started bringing living plants in. She started spraying the home and her daughter's room with rose water. She started opening the blinds so the light could actually be let in. Like, everything is so connected. And within, it wasn't even 24 hours after all of this happened that her daughter walked in one day and said, "I've seen you spraying something. Can you spray me too?" And everything just started moving into this buoyant experience. And she said now her daughter and her friends come over and they all want to be sprayed with salt water. They all want to be sprayed with rose water. Music is playing. They're laughing. It just shifted. And it didn't necessarily shift everything inside of her daughter because her daughter wasn't cleared. But this just goes to show that when you lift the load off a space, it can help lighten the load that's in you as well. And it can help elevate that negativity and really move the interference patterns that are preventing you from moving forward. Does that all make sense? It was really cool.
100%, Tiffany. You had something else?
No, I have a lot of other things, but I'll just
Okay,
I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Yeah, so I'll speak just to the principle. So major, and this is a really good example or a case study when we're living in spaces with multiple occupants. And then, of course, we have this, could it be that, the previous occupants and, the experience of suicide, but these type of things are out of sight and out of mind because we as humans, we aren't often privy to the mechanics of our field in the universe and, impressions and imprints energetically that oftentimes when we move in, we think that by bringing our items into the space, decorating it, making it, beautifying it, that's it, which that does something, but it doesn't really take care of the intense depression and the sadness and emotion that clearly was taking her daughter in a direction which became contagious. And I feel like that's one of the larger themes that your case study really highlights, the contagiousness of it flowing into the relationship with her friends and then impacting even her mother, right? Which is, it's wow to see that the energy can move in such a way. And then lastly, how I love that you said that it's not taking care of everything, because it doesn't, because there's still the free will for the individuals to choose, but you brought forth the opportunity for them to finally choose without the reinforcement of the broadcast, which that makes all the difference, and clearly the beautiful experiences that could now be participated in, right? From the young ladies who were coming through, all of that. But I just touching on the major points. We got more signs coming up. So anyone else wants to jump in? Diane, did you have anything you wanted to contribute to this?
I love these examples. They're so real because they are things that happen. Maybe we got the information, like that client of yours, Tiffany. She got the information. She knew that had happened in the house, but it didn't dawn on her that it was affecting her and her daughter. And so once it does, then that's a sign. We have to be aware of these different things. If we're starting to feel uncomfortable, things aren't working out. Maybe you're having some work done in your house, and it's not moving quickly, and that could have something to do with the energy, obviously, of the house, and the energy of the people that are doing the work. I had a client who was having trouble with that. She said they won't finish this job, and it turned out she had to let them go and find somebody else. Then once it was cleared, she found the right person. They fixed it, and it went smoothly. So it can these things that we don't really think about, that affect us. I think too, people just think, oh, it's normal that we have situations and we just have to push through them, instead of there's a solution. You can clear that obstruction and get moving forward. So
it's a great point, Diane.
One of
go
the
ahead.
things,
Go right ahead.
one of the things too about what I love that Tiffany mentioned was that the young girl, after the clearing took place, the young girl, she was conscious enough to see that her mother was spraying something that was elevational, that was life, that was highly vibrational, and wanted to be a part of it. And it just goes back to show the truth of what a clearing can do. It restores life. It restores truth, and it helps us when we're operating. We all know what it feels like when something doesn't feel great, but we also know what it feels like when something feels amazing. And to live in that kind of environment only supports the best and highest interest of all life, for people, the animals, the property, the natural consciousness of the building, the land, everything. And something else that kind of made me think about that was this idea of gravitational pull. So that memory and imprint, having all of that.
Okay, just a little heads up, Lauren, is anyone else hearing feedback?
I am.
Hey, Tiffany, I think it might be on your end. It's kind of sounding like a wind or something. That might be that AC blasting.
I'm sorry, my phone keeps overheating. So I turned the air conditioning up so it would never heat. I'm sorry. I thought my microphone was on. Okay. There was wind blasting.
Yes.
That's an aspect of clearing.
I get it. These devices are they're not functioning as well as in this heat. Right? But please continue on.
Just basically the idea of gravitational pull, that everything houses a memory, everything houses an imprint. What we experience, what we think, that all resonates within the space. It's the same idea with that chronic illness. If many times I hear this over and over, especially when children are in school, I can't get rid of this cold. I can't get rid of this flu. I get rid of it and then I'm seemingly better, but then it comes right back, and then it's over and over and over again. Well, the memory and the imprint, or this gravitational pull to everything that you were thinking when you were sick, or feeling when you were sick, or believing into the thought form that, oh, I'm going to get sick because she's sick. All of that is housed within the space. And so those are things that can be cleared to help support, life that doesn't come forward into the experience.
That's such a good point. I'm going to back it up just a little bit on what Diane was sharing and kind of merge it with what you were saying about chronic illness, and really like to lay out foundation for anybody who hears this. And how can I get sick from just my space? But we'll get there in a moment. Diane was saying something about how we have been conditioned to think that suffering is normalized. It's okay. This is just a part of the human experience. And I've heard even in different spiritual teachings, life is suffering, and I'm like, yeah, because we won't listen. And we go against the natural order of things, which part of the natural order is the idea of recycling, cleaning, restoration, renewal, which our energy fields, whether it be our bodies or our spaces, our devices, or our properties at large, require that level of attention. And when we do, we can experience more flow. Literally, the interferences operate as a form of congestion or debris that stops the flow, whether that even looks like, it sounds like, Diane, we're speaking about contractors, and our interaction with people who will be in our space working on our home doing things. And it's, so again, a great example of how this shows up in multiple areas. And briefly, for anybody who's wondering like what Lauren's talking about, how can you have chronic illness in a space? Well, if you think about how powerful thoughts are and emotions and the impact on our nervous system, negative thoughts make us weak. Lies make us weak. Think sadness, depression. It is not your true state. It is not who we really are. So the body registers that as a lie. And the lies literally weaken the immune system, the cellular integrity, our immunity. And next thing you know, we get an infection, due to the emotional state. And if we think about the space that has been imprinted with it, and a person who just, we end up getting stuck in that wheel. And it's just the right ingredients for that same experience of sickness, which might look like a fever or like a everyday cold or even like congestion, flu-like symptoms, where it's not just them, it's the environment influencing them. So thank you again, Lauren. This is just excellent, because these again are things that are out of sight, out of mind, that people usually don't contribute to their environment. But I think if anyone has ever, another great example is if anyone has ever walked into a space and felt nauseous upon entering, that like the body can be impacted, the physiology, based off of something energetic. So Tiffany, you had something I felt like you were about to chime in, because even when I said nauseous, I know you've had experiences like that too.
I've had so many experiences like that. And honestly, I've gotten, much more clarity on the importance of clearing a space before I go somewhere, or clearing my space before anyone comes over, because it prevents that. Because I, for years, was beaten upside of my head with the lessons of not clearing before people came over. Someone comes in with a runny, snotty nose as a kid. People are coughing and the whole house gets sick. And then I started clearing my home every single time before anyone ever comes over. And it was fascinating to watch who would then call and they couldn't come because they were sick. It literally, no one ever crossed the threshold, infesting the house with any of their germs, physically and energetically. Like, people don't walk in complaining in my home. People walk in and get healed in the home. This is so funny. I have a friend who, last year we were doing children's like herb fairy groups at our house, and she has 4 kids. And every single time she would come over, she would say within the first 5 minutes, one of her kids had to poop. Every time. She said, because they just felt so relaxed. I mean, still to this day, it is inevitable that any one of her kids, when they come to our house, always has to go to the bathroom immediately. And it's fascinating. And this is like a recurring experience, that buoyancy and joy comes into the home and sickness is kept at bay. And our daughter even knows now, before we have friends over, that I always will clear. And when someone calls, she's not upset anymore if they can't come, because she knows why. They weren't meant to come in the first place, and that's why we had to clear. So what was meant to happen would be there, and create the appropriate pitch that needed to be. Also, clearing places before you go there, or having a space cleared before you go, if you aren't a clearer yourself, is integral, not only to the buoyant experience that you'll have there, but from a protection standpoint, and protecting you from, the negative low vibrational energy that may present itself in complaining or accidents or sickness or whatever it may be. I cannot tell you how many times in life this has protected us from, what we otherwise weren't protected from, when I wasn't clearing before we went places and clearing spaces before people came over.
I feel that way about clearing my daughter's school. I mean, and I've talked about this before on our live streams, but the importance of knowing the power of the clearing and how it raises the vibration up to support life. I know when my daughter goes to school, there won't be an issue. It's the resonant vibration is so high that it pushes anything else out. And to live in a world where we hear so many different things, and to be able to assist in clearing those low vibrational frequencies out to support the children in their experience, to remove those fear, it's priceless. So the clearing to prevent is so important. That is everything. But on the other hand, there's so many other signs. I have to talk about like signs of why you might need a clearing. Infestations are huge. I think that is one thing that people when I clear, I hear this all the time. There's mice in the house. I have ants. I have spiders. There's mold. There's all of these things. Well, yeah, that's a sign. There's something there. And what we learn at Of the Sun is that everything, we have the ability to communicate with everything, whether it's the home, whether it's the ants, and many of the times there's a message for the occupants from the consciousness of the infestation, a lesson for us to learn to help us move through something. So if we allow ourselves to pay attention, I see this 9 out of 10 times, it's a negative energy or thought form that's associated with the infestation. And then it leads to a frustration or an anger or an aspect that is pulling it to think negative, but to flip that from the perspective and looking at it as to why the infestation's there. We can understand that through the consciousness of a clearing, by speaking to the infestation, by going into the space and understanding, okay, this is off, this is not resonating right, and be able to articulate that to the client is so integral into their understanding that then the infestation leaves. If we have mice, are we over attentive to details? Are we not paying attention to details? Ants, are we working together? What are we not building? What, all of these different aspects. Mold, what is stuck and stagnant that's just festering that we need to move through? All of these are options for us to go deeper, to not only assist the space and the property, but ourselves. And the consciousness of life is coming forward so brilliantly to show us that. So infestations are a huge sign that, yes, the property needs a clearing, but we need a clearing and a healing to help us move through something. And life is supporting that. I see that in clearing all the time.
I love this because, again, this is within the realm of things that are out of sight and out of mind. And what it brings to mind is how we've adopted as humans this condition where we feel like we live in isolation from our environment. Like, no, that's the house, is not me. And everything that you're speaking to, well, that everyone has been speaking to, but again, more succinctly to your point, is that you're not separated from the infestations. They're showing up in your reality, just like, you're not separated from whatever your health issues are or financial issues. Like, you're experiencing it through your retina. You're feeling what you feel. It's oh my gosh, the rats or the roaches or the ants or the, I don't know, grasshoppers, chipmunks, bed bugs. There's a lot of different things that can occur, right? And we have stories for days. But the point is stretching yourself to see, what is it showing me? How can I pivot? And these are really some of the principles, the laws that we're sharing with our clients, with our students here, that helps us stay in our power, where we don't have to be mad at the infestation for showing us what we called it in. We sent the signal. It's showing up to help us course correct. And hopefully we follow the breadcrumbs into why it's showing up, but this is, again, why clears are here. One of the value in the clear, to help guide you to see the truth of why that's showing up, not just call the exterminator to kill them, because best believe that that information, that data that's in your field, is going to show up in another way.
Yeah,
and it might come stronger and harder than a couple of little rodents running around the space. So these are really great points supporting like the mechanics, the laws and principles. Anyone else had any other signs that they wanted to jump into?
Yeah, it's not with infestation, but it's fascinating how things come forward to teach lessons always in clearings, I find. And it's so clear with infestations. I also think that sometimes there are things in us that we haven't cleared away or moved through that can linger, and then they show up in the space and remind us what we need to move through because we're reinforming it. I cleared a home about a year ago, and there was all of this addiction energy that needed to be cleared. And I was giving the report, and the woman was like, "I can't believe that you're saying this." She said, "My husband and I are both former addicts, and they're both former alcoholics and addicts of various things." And she said, "We've been clean 20 years." And she said, "We've actually not ever even had a drink in this house." She said, "But last week, I couldn't stop thinking about it." And you think that that is just like, how in the world, right? Could something just from your thought then get imprinted into the space, then show up in a clearing that has to be cleared away? But we are our spaces, like we keep reiterating. And it was so necessary for this information to come forward to show this person how powerful our thoughts are, how it can get infused into the space, but the work that they still had to do on themselves to not fall back in to that looped pattern, that even though they weren't physically doing the act of drinking, it still wasn't out of them. They still hadn't cleared themselves of the addiction energy, so much so that the space was being informed by it. And so I found it fascinating. I mean, even as a clearer, I know all of these things to be very true, but it's still just wild when it happens, you know? And so it was really interesting.
I'll make a quick point, and I think Diane has something to share. This is such a really good point. One of the signs that I had listed was when you're looking to grow and evolve, but your environment pulls you back in. And, your case study speaks to that. And I've noticed within myself and other clients alike, where it often starts within the thoughts. You don't just go and do the thing, you end up having the thoughts that are entertaining the thing. And so your clients were working with sheer willpower. They decided and they were directing their will. We're not going to drink a lick or smoke or what they were doing. Pure will, but their will is still being influenced based off the memory that resides in their field that needs to be cleared and collapsed. But in it's resonance, right? But this is again just such a really great point of, it's not just you. What is the field broadcasting in terms of people who are looking to grow and evolve, right? Because these people are clearly on an evolutionary path of health and well-being. They see the need to be clean, to be sober, to be clear, right? That's essentially from their perspective. So thank you again. Diane, you had something you wanted to add to the pot?
I was just affirming that idea, of when the thoughts that you have will imprint your space. Even as a clearer, I know that for me, I've had something like, if I've had some negative thoughts or whatever in a certain room, or I've had a conversation with someone on the phone when I've been in a room, I walk into that room and then, oh, that comes back. And it's like, really, why? And it's like, oh, clear that out. So it's fascinating what our thoughts bring forward. And we aren't always aware of that. I wasn't aware of it until I was thinking, why do I keep thinking the same thing when I go in the same place in my house? And it's like, oh, and, had to think back, and I had to clear that up, and then it's fine. But it is fascinating that we are very powerful beings with our thoughts.
Yeah, briefly, this brings up something that I recommend and encourage to people who's tuning in, hearing these stories, especially this part about noticing the repeated behavior. It's so important to observe and have pattern recognition. Do I always do this thing when I'm entering into this room, where the negative experience has happened? Like, do I have a drop or like, so for example, because this, again, I know we all had so many signs and talking points, but this spoke to one of them on my list, which was, um, for example, work related. When you're bringing work into the house and
Mhm.
maybe you've had this tense energy, stress from work, it's in the chairs, it's in the table, the computers, the desk, etc., and your paperwork, and then you go back in it and you continue to have this same experience, and that happens across the board, whether it was a little bickering in the kitchen or what happens in the common areas where people regularly congregate, and just really observing awareness. Like, oh, I notice that every time I'm in here, I think about this. This comes to mind, so it does help to actually to see, and this is actually to one of your earlier points, Diane, to not just take it for normalcy. Like, this is not normal behavior, especially in terms of where you're looking to grow and evolve. Anyone else had anything else? Because again, I know you all are locked and loaded over there.
I do, but I think, Tiffany, if you have something you want to share, I want to be mindful of the time for you.
I just had, this is super fast, but just one of the other many reasons to get a clearing or to know that your house needs clearing is disturbances in sleep patterns. I had a client who, this has happened, I can't tell you how many times, but where there are those little gadgets that can regulate your sleep. I don't even know what to call them. Like your 30% sleep, whatever, optimization versus 90% sleep optimization. And this woman called me to get a clearing, and she said, my husband doesn't believe in any of this nonsense. That's what he said. He was like, but she said, but he woke her up in the morning and said, I know you know someone who can help me. I cannot sleep. My sleep number has been in the 30s. He was like, and now all of a sudden I keep seeing my father next to my bed who died last year. I don't know what to do. Please help. So I clear it. And the next day she texts me, his sleep number is back to 90. He's a believer now. He understands that he was having interference patterns with the energy. And so it was, I think that any interference pattern that you feel in your space, any disturbance, anything that, that preventing you from getting ahead, preventing the ease and grace from being there, is a reason to neutralize the energy in this space. It could be brought in from someone else. You could be bringing it in. It's all possible. But clearing is always a solution, I have found.
Hey, and he became a believer. He knows now.
Yes.
That's a funny story.
Became a believer. I know.
Yes.
You had something, Lauren? You wanted to jump back in there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this idea of thoughts, this keeps coming back to thoughts, and sometimes what I wanted to talk about is that not all of us live in single family homes. We live in condos and high rises and apartment complexes that are influenced by the neighbors that are in the same building, and those thoughts, those emotions, those energies, they know no barriers, so they can permeate through the walls and the same house that we're living in. Maybe 8 or 10 other people or hundreds are also living in. So this idea, I remember I had a client calling, and she had problems with her neighbors. She was, the issue was they were smoking marijuana, and it was something she was very against. She could smell it coming into her home, and she's like, I know. And she had children, and so she wanted to clear. She's like, so let's raise the vibration of the space. And she understood that. So we did, with this intention in mind, to raise the vibration of the space. After about 2 clearings, I'd say 2 clearings, it stopped. Those neighbors actually moved. And so the understanding that whether it's an issue with a neighbor or a management company I've also had stories of clients calling, they've had issues with management companies. They can't get people to come in to fix things or other aspects to clear. And then as they do that, everything starts to fall back into place the way that it's supposed to in order. So you're restoring truth when you're clearing, and that assists with those aspects.
This is so major because I've had experiences with clients as well with this. But when we think about it, it brings to mind again that we're not living in isolation. Everything's interconnected, fields within fields within fields, and this I can see where it even gives more encouragement to the individual who is aspiring to become a property clearer, or if you already are, to clear more than just your own space, to clear the environment, to raise the field. And what's great about this is that we're not forcing anyone to stop their smoking, to stop doing whatever they're doing. We are influencing the vibrational field that really gives permission and influence the consent to do such a thing. We're restructuring what even attracted them to produce the behavior in the first place. Which when we think about this and scale it up, it's such a powerful perception of what we can do as humans. Diane keeps saying, our thoughts are powerful, our thoughts are powerful. It is indeed. And this process is by way of directive thought and our life force energy, working with our guidance to direct it into spaces and places. And these are things that we call out with. If people are wondering, like, what are the things you call it, we call literally out the energies and frequencies of addiction, so that these, and depression, different frequencies that get trapped within the space that will in some cases play out differently for everyone. So again, these are just very powerful signs of why a property clearing. I'd like us to conclude with something that Lauren brought up. And before we do, I know, Tiffany, you're about to jet out at the top of the hour. We want to thank you for joining us because we know you have another engagement, and you're like, look, I'm here for it, even though that phone's
Thank you so much. Yes. Yes. All right. Invocation Veritas. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. Thank you. And so this wrap up here in terms of what we can do, and you kind of hinted to it a bit, Lauren, about how we can offset or we can influence the space. And I was in a consult with a client today. It was just a discovery call where we were giving them a rundown of what we do and what's to be anticipated. And I share with her the same thing I share with clients as who are getting property clearings, is that your number one defense is to remember that the space is you and you are the space, and you can broadcast and influence the space just based off your predominant thoughts and experiences. Mm-hmm. So it's really about taking the wheel of choosing, what will I allow and permit within my home, within my space, starting with yourself. Yes. How long do you sit in your depression? I'm not saying people don't have sadness and drop, but we want dips, not drops. You dip and you stay and you wallow and you marinate, and it's cooking in your environment like a crock pot, right? You're gonna brew up a meal that's gonna have this large mass of energy that's broadcasting. So Lauren, you mind taking us into that idea?
Yes, it's on those notes, it's so important with the clearings. As we start having the clearings, it informs, as you were saying, the field. It informs the body. The body intelligence informs the brain. All of these aspects help come together to build this cohesive energy that lifts us. And I've seen this time and time again with clients who are on retainer that get monthly clearings because they have felt the shifts and changes in their experience. And it's not only their physical presence of the environment, but their bodies. They're listening to the message of what the clearing is coming forward to say to them. Because many times, and I know you know this, Tarvars and Diane, communications come forward. When we're in the clearing, we're receiving information, Akashic information. And that is shared with these clients, and it helps them in their day-to-day experiences, where I have had clients who are looking to get pregnant and they want to maintain the integrity of their clearings. What can I do? Let's keep the space clear so that we may have the frequency of life surrounding us as we're in the process of cultivating life. to the point of the property saying, start growing plants from seed outside. You're gestating life. Get in the frequencies of what it is to birth something. And they get pregnant. They got pregnant. They're in their third trimester now. And so it's such a wonderful feeling to know that as a clearer, when they reach out to you to say, can we do this? And then you share that from the consciousness of this brilliant modality to then it manifests into their experience. That's a victory. That's a joy. That's life. That's light. And aspects, other clients wanting to change their career, knowing that if I'm supported in these frequencies of the clearing and the healing, that's going to help me cultivate the joy and the momentum and the energy that I need to manifest the next best experience for me if something I know isn't serving me anymore. So let's clear my house. Because I know if I'm going to clear my house, all those thoughts of what's not serving me are going to leave, and I'm going to reinform my body, my brain, my experience with what I want. And that's going to support me in the next experience. So there's so many different ways. Those are just a few examples, but the integrity of the clearing and what it can do to support us in our next steps moving forward is so important into our experience of the now.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. And this example can be expanded into so many other directions in terms of just the disposition, what we're broadcasting. At the core, it's what I'm broadcasting and what is my relationship, which all of these things matter even after getting your property cleared. What's the experience you're having in the space? Are you experiencing more highs? Are you experiencing more lows? And usually it's a mixed soup. When we go in there as property clearers, it's a hodgepodge of different frequencies, right? But
Yes.
usually it's more negative than positive. It's not that positive doesn't exist, but we can see things are imbalanced. And again, these seemingly small gestures are not small at all. These are all things that when you continue to do these things, they accumulate and build up. And that's what's been happening with us in the opposite direction. All these little sad moments, negative experiences, they just accumulate, and usually without anything to balance or offset them. But again, I think this is a great way to end, unless anyone else had any other thoughts or comments about today's topic.
We could always share more.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. This was such an exquisite experience speaking about this and the truth of it.
I most certainly agree. Diane, you had any other final thoughts?
Oh, just thank you. This was so expansive. I think this really gives people some ideas to think about, because we had a range of all different things for people that might trigger something. For some people that are like, oh, that's happened to me and I never thought that it was my property. I thought it was just something that happened. So I think these were all really good things to bring forward. And thank you. Thank you. This was a wonderful night.
Yes, most certainly.
Thank you. Yes.
So just a little heads up for anyone who's tuning in. We got some links in the description. If you're looking to learn more about quantum light property clearing, go ahead and book yourself a discovery call. We can hash it out and share with you all the different avenues to explore with taking back sovereignty, your freedom, your power by way of energy hygiene, whether that's learning different courses and modalities or becoming a quantum light property clearer yourself. You could even sign up for our energy clearing protocol, as we mentioned, soul clearings, property clearings, again, removing the energetic debris, and then along the way, giving you tools to sustain yourself between each clearing. Or again, continue to chime in. Every Friday, we have something going on with Diane in Lakesh Studio 1. Every Monday, there's Lauren with Flowers and Frequencies. Wednesday, Diane, round 2 throughout the week. She's hitting us with the light body meditations. I mean, there's a lot of free events, so be sure to tune in. And we thank you all for joining us. So we leave you in the frequencies of Lakesh and Veritas with honor, respect, and gratitude, integrity, discipline, and action.
Thank you.
And Lakesh.
And Lakesh and Veritas.